And action!
Goodbye, me!
When I arrive, what should be a 10-minute get in, get out kind of mission, all of a sudden turns into this really incredible 2.5-hour chase scene, which all great Terminator films are.
This new film recaptured that tone, that intensity, that take no prisoners feeling.
You come with me or you're dead in the next 30 seconds.
The action is 10 times bigger. It's like we're falling out of a what into a what, and then what? It's all good until someone loses an eye.
We're gonna wreck some real shit, right? We're gonna smash some fucking trucks. We're gonna bust some shit up.
The way it is written, it is huge. We do a lot of great action.
Of course, it's technology and there are special effects, but we're all trying hard to make it look real and to do as much as we can.
At each stage, I kept getting more and more excited about it.
August 29th, 1997 was supposed to be Judgment Day. My son and I stopped that. Saved 3 billion people.
Where's your son now?
Skynet had sent several Terminators to hunt him. One finally caught up with us and carried out orders from a future that never happened.
Pretty much everybody in the writer's room thought that the idea of John Connor had been explored quite thoroughly, which is an opportunity because for me, it was always about Sarah. You know, John was just a kid with some potential, but I was more interested in the mother fighting for her child than I was in what the potential of the child could be. But in order to make way for this new future, you kind of have to be done with John. So what's the most dramatic and powerful way you can do that? It led inevitably to us clearing the board in that first scene, and it's pretty traumatic, and I think it really slaps the audience in the face and says, wake up, there's something new about to happen.
The opening of the movie, we have a sequence where we essentially are back in time. We see young versions of the principal characters, and it's by far the hardest work we've done on digital humans.
It's unbelievably difficult. ILM is working with a process where they're doing some facial tracking that they can actually apply to their models, and they're really pushing the boundaries to try to make that look as photoreal and believable for the audience as possible. And it's going to be difficult because everybody has been watching these movies for years and years and years, so we have to be spot on to really nail that sequence.
We started off the process building our digital models and really just referencing the ages from Terminator 2. And that was great because we could actually take many shots from that film, line up our models, and just make sure that they matched. And that was a long and tedious process.
We cast actors to play their bodies because we need bodies on set to perform, to light, to interact with each other physically and let the director direct. We typically will have our stars there if we can. So in this case, if we have Linda Hamilton, who's got her younger self, she was there to help us with coaching the body actor that'll play her body, essentially.
Face replacement and body replacement, that is like a whole new world for me. They had a body double who doubled my body from 1991. And I got to sort of go, yeah, she looks right, she looks good.
From Linda's perspective, you know, we get her performance and she delivers the lines, and then we use her to drive her younger self.
We're so attuned just from an evolutionary standpoint to really identify anything that looks kind of unnatural. And we know in our minds, right, there's no way that we could have physically captured young Linda or Eddie. And so it's that kind of uncanny valley that really is hard to close the gap. But as each movie does it, it's becoming progressively better and better. And I feel like we've taken a leap on this one, and it looks great.
Action!
A lot of the movie takes place in Mexico and the southern U.S., and we couldn't go to Mexico for a variety of reasons, so we shot 30-some days in Spain.
For set dressing and props and art direction, it was all sort of coming together and figuring out what are the flavors of those locations that we're shooting in Mexico and the Southwest. What do we want to portray on the screen and what parts of those places?
Spain is a very good double for Mexico. It's often used because of the topography, the light, the shapes that you get.
We'd managed to find probably around about 10 options for each of the locations in Spain.
We sat down then with the director and went through those and then honed it down into 2 or 3 really, really good locations.
When explaining the main character, Dani, her barrio where she lived, you need the audience to enjoy the feeling of being in Mexico. So you need to give them all those things that they don't really know. There's the people, there's sounds, there's smells, there's color. All of that you can put in a movie.
Buenos días, Mona.
Ay, siempre con tus flores.
Siempre.
¿Quieres tu tortita de tamal?
Ándale, le llevo una a Diego. I'm here at the Ramos house in Mexico. There's Tim, our director, and Naila. They're working hard. I'm going to show you a little bit of our house. We are going to establish this relationship, this family, tons of people coming in and out.
Can I get Danny's bag?
This is the set, and that's Lee that is always working hard. This is my room. Welcome to Danny's room. Well, this is the very beginning of the film, one of the first scenes, and we are going to see how a normal day in the Ramos family is. Let's go, Diego. We're running late. Ya, Taquita.
It's all about the layering. We used graffiti, but the graffiti that we used for Mexico was not maybe how a lot of people think of graffiti, like words or tagging. We had an artist who did paintings. We reference Oaxaca, which is a town in Mexico where they make all these beautiful little figures that are in bright colors, and they're quite amazing.
We would paint a building and put up a mural, and we'd come to take it down, and they're like, no, 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 no. We'd rather have the mural stay up, because it's such a beautiful piece of work, and it takes a lot of talented people and a lot of time to create it.
I'm from Mexico City, born and raised. My mom was born in the States, but her family's from Spain, and I love Spain. But Madrid, it's very different to Mexico City. So when I arrived to set, it was like, Diego, you know, just meet with the art department heads and just to make sure that it's authentic. And I didn't want to overstep my boundaries. It's not my place, but at the same time, I wanted to try and help them with any doubts or any questions to make it as authentic as possible.
It's not the easiest thing to do Mexico City in Madrid. Madrid does not really look a lot like Mexico City. As a production designer, you look for the building shape, the window shape. What can I do with this shop? How can I change it?
Does it look like Mexico? I think so. It looks like Mexico.
When we actually shot the scenes on the day, I was shocked. I felt like I was in Mexico City, from the cabs to the buses, which are called microbuses, everything. I mean, the street signs, the food. And I went immediately up to the art department. I was like, wow, guys, you guys killed it.
And when someone walks up to you and says that to you, you know you've cracked it.
Supposed to pick up a detainee named Danny Ramos.
Please lock your weapon.
Expect a big ping, brother. My whole body's a weapon.
The Terminator itself has always functioned best when it's taken upon the role of an authority figure. And so we thought, okay, well, if she's in Mexico and try to cross the border, which has all sorts of resonances with the things that are happening today, it'd be interesting if the Terminator then kind of morphs what it's presenting itself as somebody, or border control or ICE or whatnot.
We are shooting a detention center scene that happens when our characters try and cross the border. And it's a lot of chaos, a lot of extras, and a lot of fighting. This is a baton that they gave me that I'm actually not allowed to use, and somebody is always watching me in case I hurt someone.
We shot the detention center scene in a Nokia factory that we had made to look as much like one of the American detention facilities as we could.
Sarah Connor. I'm Officer Rigby. It's an honor.
We're right now filming in a warehouse which is doubling as a detention center on the border of Texas and Mexico. I'm a border control officer who takes Sarah Connor away and interrogates her.
What do you sound like in the movie?
I sound like this. No, I sound like this. In the movie, I kind of sound a little bit more like your everyday average American.
Let's go. You belong in your own private cage.
We're playing two Mexican cholos here at the border prison center. A lot of extras, amazing people, having a lot of fun.
Everybody's friendly, everything is okay.
Having a good time right here in Hungary. I don't usually have my head shaved like this, so...
This tattoo is
real. It's not real. It's not real.
Yesterday when we came here, it was so shocking and it was so moving that
Tim Miller, our director, was crying, but he was just asking everyone to forgive him for all this, you know, like suffering we're like recreating here.
I got on the PA system and apologized because it was hard being there. Likewise, I believe these people, the Border Patrol, doing their job. It doesn't vilify anybody. It just shines a light on a situation that is unfortunate for all concerned. So it was very emotionally powerful. All the actors felt it when we were there.
It's quite emotional coming in because there are hundreds of people in these cages and you think, this really happens. So I made a real point of just talking to people so that we were all in it together.
The great thing about working on projects like this, they do such an amazing job, and to dress in the set and dress in the people, and you kind of feel like you're, you know, where you're meant to be. It's also very poignant and thought-provoking filming somewhere like this right now as well, because this is happening.
It's rehearsal, I'm sorry.
Bye.
2 days ago, my commander had them tattoo these coordinates on me. Whoever sent you these texts is the same person I was told to go to for help.
What does it mean?
It means we're going to Texas.
The T-800 cabin in the movie where Arnold and his family live was something that Tim wanted to be about a Terminator that has become as human as possible and lived the American dream or the human dream, but he wanted a specific feel.
The T-800 cabin was quite an interesting set for me because you need to tell the story of, did they buy the house? You know, they bought a piece of land, they built something. The aging needs to be of that level. You need to show that. You need to tell the story of how he's learnt about people, reading, researching, traveling, whatever it is he's done.
While raising Mateo, my son, I began to understand what I'd taken from you.
You grew a conscience?
The equivalent to one, yes.
We'd looked at a lot of locations, a lot of cabins and houses that were in the middle of the woods that just didn't work. There was a house on the location that was built for another production. We loved the land, but the house didn't work, so we struck the house and we had a full cabin built.
It didn't want to look too old-fashioned. We sort of had the brief that it was probably 12 to 15 years old, but it had a slight modern edge to it. And outside we created a sort of bunker and shooting range, so we still have the whole armory references which go back to the other Terminator films as well.
You just keep this around?
Even without a rogue AI taking over, I calculate a 74% chance that human civilization will collapse into barbarism. Also, this is Texas.
We are currently in the house which is being used for the T-800 cabin in the woods. There was a lot of thought that went into the colouring, keeping it warm to sort of emulate him being part of family. And that's why you can see a lot of wood. We went for real oak. It was all to give it that realism. We wanted it to be a bit Navajo, to have that sort of look of that, and the colouring was very important to get the colours right and all these paint finishes and
Do you think it would be good
and this gentleman here.
Do you think it would be good to move the chair a little forward?
Yeah, I was
Because,
just wondering if you wanted to do that.
I love it. You did a great job.
Tell me what happens when this all falls apart.
There's no warning. Day one, everything just stops. By day 3, the whole world was at war.
The main goal, the main purpose of Grace's future in the film is to show that this is not a happy place, this future, and really to show what the stakes are, because if our heroes lose in the present, this is what's going to happen.
This is 25 years in the future we're going to. Tim and I talked about how far you could go with that.
Science in this future is not slick and well-designed like Apple. It's more of a, we're gonna do whatever we can to fight.
Obviously, with past Terminator movies, very iconic in terms of the battlefields of the future, this has a very different look about it. So the VFX were handled at Blur, and they went out and did some really cool things where they took drones out and they filmed this really big canyon and got a bunch of photography, essentially, and are using photogrammetry to create a real environment. So it looks super photoreal. It's a really amazing sequence that looks a little bit different than what we've seen in the past.
It was a nice tease of our future soldiers and this amazing vehicle called the Dragonfly, which was a modern version of a troop carrier.
We are 5 clicks out, carrying wounded precious cargo. Over.
We're inside what I've been told is called the Dragonfly, and it's a helicopter from the future, and it's hard to say what it's gonna look like, because it's all blue screen right now, but God, I can't wait to see it.
With the Dragonfly, Tim made his decision that the way that it looked was going to be this quite sort of heavier, chunkier piece.
They've just come from a mission, and they're landing back at the base when the Rev 7s catch up to them.
We are dirtying, spritzing, blood, dirt, mud, all this good stuff. My friend Tom here noticed the scars. This is one of our flash forwards to the future, where the Resistance is trying to stay one step ahead of the horde of machines. And Tom here is one of the leaders, so just making him suitably a mess, because they've just been in battle.
A battle is not about infiltration, it's about the most effective killing machines you can find. So the Rev 7s look very different than the Rev 9s, and they don't even make an attempt to be human. And they're pretty horrifying creatures when they show up. They're just there to fuck shit up.
The Rev 7s are 7-foot-tall liquid metal and endoskeleton combined.
Once you sort of decide on, we're gonna do the endoskeleton with liquid metal over top of it, then that kind of becomes the technological basis for everything Legion does in the future. So everything is that. And so I thought, how is it gonna kill people? It's gonna make these tentacles and fucking stab them to death.
Humans have some weapons to fight back. They have these large rifles that fire these depleted uranium shells that are able to blow holes through them, but doesn't necessarily stop them.
When we did those flash forward scenes, I'd say we really were aiming for something that almost is the feeling of a memory or a fever dream, more impressionistic. I really thought that this is more about like how we really don't want this to happen than it is about like, wow, it's cool, they're blowing up robots. And so it was making it seem like a kind of a nightmarish memory.
Because it's the Terminator series, when Tim came out and we jumped on the film together, he said, we have to do as much in camera as we can.
Tim is very critical of making sure everything is real, the body positions are real, impacts are real, and it definitely makes a challenge.
The roots of Terminator is in practical effects, and I didn't know as much about practical effects, so we brought in a lot of experts, like Graham Kelly, who was our action vehicles guy. He's done a lot of second unit. Phil Silvera, who was our second unit photographer and stunt coordinator. Phil's quite comfortable with big car action scenes, so I would write kind of what I want in general, and then these guys are gonna say, yeah, this is stupid, or that's been done before, or this is not possible, or here's how we make this cooler.
Action!
I'm really excited. We are here in the middle of the desert. It's really hot. I'm sweating, but I'm really excited because today we're having this really exciting scene with a car chase. You see like smoke. We have big explosions.
The freeway location is a difficult place to film. We looked at around about 6 or 7 different freeways within Spain. There's so many different departments who are needed to be involved in that, including the stunts department and the rigs and special effects. They did an incredible job under really, really difficult circumstances, being out in the elements and shooting in heat.
We're out in Murcia, which is a town in southern Spain, shooting our classic big rig Terminator chase. This is my baby. I haven't named her yet. I don't know, Big Bird maybe. So as you can see, we have a crew of about 300 today, all inclusive. We got our wonderful riggers here. Right behind us over here, let's swing around this way, is the target. My sole purpose is to extinguish the life form sitting in this vehicle here.
When we were shooting the car chase, it was insane to see all the technology that they used for the actual stunt cars. And Graham Kelly, who's the actual stunt driver car specialist, he engineered this pod that was attached to an altered vehicle. So this car can't be driven?
It can be driven as well.
It can?
As well, yeah. You can drive it from inside, and you can drive it from... And you can drive it from the back. In front of the camera that's on.
The pod is really a driving position that's in a cage
that we can connect to the controls of the vehicle and we can have it driving from any position on the truck or the F-150. It gives us more room for the camera around the actors, and they haven't got to drive. They're complete passengers in it, so they're able to act.
We are shooting a driving sequence today that I thought I would be responsible for, but it turns out they built this custom sort of dune buggy attachment to put in front of the car and drive wildly while I do this with my arms, very believably.
Here you see our pods. We got a pod up there. We got a pod here. That's so they can be operated by the actual professionals. I mean, if you've ever tried to drive a car from your bumper, I don't know if anyone ever has, but I imagine it's pretty difficult. I personally don't want to find out.
It takes some skill and some paying attention because you've got a lot of cameras and everything, and you really can't see what's behind you. And it's long, so you have to really plan ahead for turns and obstacles and things like that.
For me, it's a pretty special thing because I was fortunate enough to be one of the 3 truck drivers on Terminator 2, which was probably the film that made my career, or at least began it and put me kind of as a known name. So it's really an honor to be here and to be chosen to drive the truck in this film. It's really a cool truck. It's an ex-European military truck, and it's a 6-wheeled beast. They've added some power to it, and we've got 6 of these things. So they all just run really better than anybody would expect them to.
We're about to destroy this taco stand with a very large truck and hopefully make it a very small taco stand after the fact.
The F-150 comes barreling round this corner, makes a hard right turn, loses the back a bit and gets past that. And our N10 truck is coming from the same direction. He's bearing down on her. Obviously, he's slower in the bend, but he doesn't care about that taco stand. So he's going to smash that to pieces, just going to demolish it.
3, 2, 1, action!
Big, like burrito-sized tortilla decided that it wanted a close-up and completely covered B-cam. I want to know who hired that tortilla, and I want him fired. It's probably Tim Miller.
Nothing like taking real cars and banging them up in chases, and we had stuff flying everywhere. The stunt team and our car prep team did an awesome job. Of course, there's times when you can't put a real human in that car because they're far too dangerous, where we have to step in, or we've got cables pulling cars for safety reasons, and we'll have to paint that stuff out. So that's the bulk of the visual effects work, but the fundamentals, it's all rooted in camera.
The whole final sequence of the C5 getting into the Hummer, in the plane, falling to the dam, the water work, it's just huge.
What the hell? What the hell?
It even blows my mind every time. I'm like, what? It's so crazy.
The Rev 9's right on them, and so they're kind of forced to run for cover onto this C5 plane that's about to take off. Everybody really wanted to do a scene in the plane where we had this big fight going on and gravity with variable G. I talked to some pilots to research the action for this, and you don't get 0 G by a plane just falling, right? Which is what a lot of people would think. If a plane is just falling and people are inside it, they just fall to the front of the plane and stick to the wall. The way you get variable G is like the plane was essentially doing this. And in that little area where it's between up and down is where you get 0 G. So I talked to the pilots, and the way to do that is you have a plane that's coming apart, engines are being ripped off and wings, while at the same time the autopilot is on, and the autopilot always tries to get the nose up and level.
There is a weightlessness and an auto-correction that happens, which is going to play out throughout the sequence, because those are the things that actually happen.
This allows us to have this sort of really complicated mind fuck of a fight inside that.
The C5 sequence is amazing. Tim went in with his previous team and just spent months and months working on that.
We motion captured a bunch of the action, and off of that motion capture, then we have a digital animatic version of a previs that Tim constantly refines.
When you see the animation come forward about all these people being thrown up and down in a plane that's crashing, it was so much different from the other pieces that you'd seen on other movies.
Trying to remember where gravity is not usually something you have to worry about as a filmmaker, and especially if you shoot out of order. It's like, okay, so the plane is rotating, which means gravity is going to be pushing them against this wall. We're also going down, which means gravity is going to be going down. And we're also about to shift direction. So it's a lot of stuff to kind of take into account where the orientation of that plane is. And it was by far the hardest thing to choreograph and figure out. So as you guys are coming to the bottom of the stairs, she starts this turn here, and it'll throw you sort of down and into that wall there. That'll put Danny here. That'll send Linda going this way. That'll send Arnold hanging for a beat there, and then as the plane rights itself, it's going to go up this way.
If just one thing is off, if the hair is not in the right direction when someone's going up or someone's going down, the hair's going one way or doesn't look right.
Neil Corbell, who is a special effects genius who has built the gimbal on this, has made it great for stunts to kind of figure things out on that set piece.
Tim wanted zero-G moments in the crashing plane, and one of the ways I thought that we could achieve that would be to rotate the whole set. So we had to determine what size set we needed, and a real sort of C5 Galaxy's 120 to 140 feet long. We couldn't obviously build all of that, so we built 60 foot of it, and we can stick a blue screen at one end to give us the depth that we need.
It is a gimbal that is over 80 ton of steel. It is a mammoth piece of engineering, and we built a C5 inside of it.
It's probably one of the biggest rigs I've built. It revolves 360 degrees and tilts 10 degrees either way. It's the world's biggest washing machine. This has taken us 5-6 months to design and another 5 to 6 months to build it. So it's been quite a long project.
Action on the rig.
The C5 battle was one of our really challenging battle sequences, and there's just a huge mix of live action and digi-doubles and lots of effects mixed in.
The Rev 9 is able to wrap up the T-800's arms while they're grappling, and the T-800 just pulls out of his flesh, and we see the mechanical arm underneath.
There's a huge amount of VFX, and so the process is Julian and Tim will sit down and they'll cut the sequence, and then they'll come to me and they'll say, okay, well, these are the VFX that we need to enhance this and bring our vision out. So for instance, there's a huge tear on the side of the C5 plane from the collision, and so we have to add that hole in the side of the plane and extend it. And so there's a massive amount of work within that, but hopefully it goes unnoticed.
This whole fight in the C5 ends with them getting into this Humvee that's rigged for a parachute drop, while Arnold holds the Rev 9 off, and they bail out. When it bails out, the parachutes aren't deployed, and they're in free fall. And Grace, being the super soldier that she is, she climbs outside and releases the parachutes and saves everybody.
We're getting ready to train Mackenzie to do the flight for the falling Humvee sequence here in beautiful Budapest. The camera's inside looking out.
Okay.
And you settle in front of everybody, and then you whip yourself around to the side.
It's gonna be a tiring couple of weeks. We are shooting a scene on wires outside of a Humvee where I'm holding onto it as it plummets down to earth. It's very fun to swing about up there and a little painful. Linda Hamilton, Natalia Reyes, they have just been pushed out of a C5 that was also plummeting down to earth. And now we're trying to open well, really me, I'm doing a lot of the legwork. Open the parachutes so that they can land safely on the edge of a dam.
This is for our high-speed winch system, so I'm able to actually fly her with this remote. And it's kind of fun. It's nice to be able to go up and down easily, so no counterweights for us today.
I'm really jealous. I would love to do that. You'll see it. It's so cool. Linda and I are going to be inside just moving like crazy. So this is a roller coaster today.
Behind me is the set of the spillway, and we have huge waterfall effects and also spray effects as well. The other way we have it's the same scene, and we have a 6-axis motion base with a Humvee on, so at the moment it's in its horizontal position. When we get the actors in, we can raise it up 90 degrees, so it's vertical, and we can do all the close-up stuff on here with the actors, keeping them nice and safe. And on the other side, we can do the big stunts and wider shots to show the scale of what we're trying to do.
Do you see this Humvee over here? You see all this shit? Just fucking insane. Look at this. This is the biggest thing that I've ever been a part of by a long shot. These cranes are giant. That sequence there, I'm personally very, very excited. I like all the sequences, but I really like that sequence.
The minute that they hang you upside down, you feel nauseated.
Linda's having so much fun. She loves water parks, so.
I love sharing water. I do. Jump on in.
Come in. So much fun.
You have this big underwater sequence where the Humvee is tumbling, being washed down the river, while this Terminator's coming after them to kill him. It's pretty fucking cool.
For the underwater sequences, they did a lot of tank work where the actors were actually in an underwater environment. There's no way to replicate the authenticity of the actors actually doing it. So we really appreciated that they were willing. So we got fantastic plates to start with, and then from there we're just kind of augmenting and creating this very turbulent river environment that's around them.
The Humvee underwater sequence was shot on a huge blue screen stage, and then all of the exterior has been created in a digital environment to make it feel like they're under this huge body of water.
We actually got to do 2 underwater sequences, both the Sarah and Danny underwater and then the Terminators underwater fighting each other. And those were really fun because Tim wanted to play it very murky and very dark, and yet these eyes punctuate out of the darkness, and it's very creepy, and I think it elicits everything that the original Terminator film did in terms of who these characters are.
He's going to swim up against the windows, and that's what he's going to punch, and then we have big visual effects as the blades coming through. It's going to be badass.
You have too much CG effects. I think the audience nowadays, they can see it. It's great to combine visual effects and special effects together, and I think that the more you can mix it up and you keep the audience guessing, the better it is.
Okay, I just want to say a few words because it's the last day. I want to say thank you very much. I'm very much aware of every single person here, of how much work that you put in to make this movie become a reality. Doesn't matter if it is wardrobe, if it is makeup, if it is hair, if it is stunt coordinating, stunt people. For me, the success of the movie is the hundreds of people that worked together and slaved away for months and months and months. So I just want you to know how much I appreciate all of your work. We love you. This was extraordinary. Thank you very much for all your work. Thank you.
Woo!